Sup folks, welcome to the part 1, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, Chapter 1, Destiny Comes Knocking. To say Izuku was depressed, wouldn't be fully true. Ever since All Might crushed his dreams, he'd been in an emotionless haze, going through the day like an automated robot. However, as time went on he began to do less and less. First, it started with minor things. He stopped taking care of his hair completely, letting it grow longer and disheveled. Then he started putting on the same ruffled-up uniform over and over again. And then he stopped going to school completely, and almost stopped leaving the house entirely, rarely even leaving him room. Inko didn't force him to go. She knew something was wrong with her son and she wanted to help him rather than forcing him back out into the world and pretending like everything was fine. Unfortunately, Quirk had other ideas. She had been promoted recently, and her new job required her to travel out of the country. Of course, she didn't want to, but she had already accepted the job prior to Izuku's breakdown, and if she backed out now she risked losing her job. All she could do was pack her bags and ask Mitsuki to check up on Izuku and send him money to live on. So now, Izuku was alone, aimless and without purpose. He sat alone in his living room, not really feeling like staying in his All Might covered bedroom at the moment. He flipped through the TV channels. Breaking news: All Might new hero Edshot Mount. His face was twisted in annoyance. For once he just didn't want to hear about heroes. All his life he had dreamed of being a hero. All his life that was the only thing he had ever wanted. Now ... without the dream ... he had nothing. Nothing to strive towards, nothing to hope for, nothing to live for. And still, all he could hear about, all he could see was heroes. He turned off the TV and put his head in his hands. What do I do now? Izuku asked himself. A few moments later, there was a loud knocking on his door. And then another. And another. It quickly became a panicked, rapid knocking, as someone's fist pounded on his door. Curious, Izuku ran to his door and looked through the peephole. Outside was a very scared little girl. Izuku immediately opened the door. The girl looked at him, surprised at first that he opened the door. But that surprise quickly turned into desperation. "Please, don't let them get me," she begged. Without another word, Izuku ushered her inside and closed the door. "What's going on? Who's after you?" Izuku asked her. "Bad men. Villains," the girl cried. "We have to hide." Bang 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 bang. Suddenly there was a louder, much louder knocking on his door, from what Izuku could only assume was the villains chasing this girl. Izuku quickly looked through the peephole and saw the shadiest looking man he had ever seen. Now, while Izuku wasn't one to judge someone for their appearance, if this man was innocent, the plague mask wasn't exactly projecting that message. Immediately Izuku went in high alert mode. "Okay, the lights are off. Maybe I can pretend like I'm not home. I need to move quickly and quietly." With that, Izuku grabbed the girl, who was startled by this action but didn't protest, and moved as quickly as he could without making a sound. He went into his room and locked the door. As he looked around for places he could hide. "If I go in the closet they'll definitely find us. I need something else." Izuku looked around his room until his eyes landed on his hamper. It was overflowing with dirty laundry, as Izuku hasn't really been in the mood to do ... anything, much less laundry. "That's it." Izuku set the girl down next to the hamper. "Okay. I'm going to dump these clothes on you so they can't see you. It's going to smell gross, but hopefully, that just makes them more likely to just look over it. I promise everything is going to be alright. Just don't make any noise, and don't move." Crack. Izuku and the girl both jumped as they heard the front door get broken down. The girl nodded quickly, and Izuku wasted no time pushing the hamper over, letting the clothes fall all over her and removing her from sight. They probably won't do a complete search. They should know the neighbors will report them breaking the door, and with that many clothes, it would take them too much time to search just that one pile. Izuku reassured himself, before realizing something. Wait. What about me? Izuku could hear the men walking through his house, and started sweating bullets. If they know that I know about them breaking into my house, they may try to silence the witness. I could pretend to be asleep. But wait, almost any sleeping person would wake up if their door was broken down. They might know I'm faking. Izuku looked around his room, hoping to find something to help him, when his eyes landed on his headphones and his phone. And Izuku got an idea. Actually, two ideas. First, he grabbed his phone and turned on the record setting, making sure it would record anything that happened in front of it. Then he swiftly hid it in his book bag, putting it in the front pocket that was facing the room. This way it wouldn't seem strange. Then, he quickly grabbed the headphones and put them on his head, before quietly laying down on the bed, pulling the covers over himself, and closing his eyes. It was terrifying, knowing that villains were inside his home. He faintly heard them in the living room, but couldn't make out any of what they were saying. After about 2 minutes he started hearing footsteps coming towards his room. They didn't go into his room immediately, probably searching the bathroom and his mother's room first, but after a while, he heard them jiggle the doorknob. When the door didn't open, the villains immediately broke it down. Izuku had to try his hardest not to flinch, while also maintaining regular breathing. He heard the villains come in. After presumably looking around for a few seconds, they started talking. "Damn it, she's not here," said one of them. "Quite. We're lucky that the kid's asleep, otherwise we'd have to cover up a murder." "Probably a few," said one of them. His voice was muffled, more muffled than the other guys that were seeing, as Izuku was wearing headphones, so Izuku assumed this was the masked villain. "Nah, I've seen those headphones. He ain't gonna hear shit," one of them said. "Then maybe he won't hear you scream," the masked villain threatened. Boss," one of the other villains gulped. "You two had one job. Keep her from escaping." The masked villain was angry. Izuku could imagine the fear running through the two lackeys. Izuku himself had to use all his willpower to keep up his fake sleeping. Without that girl, the Yakuza will never rise back into their former glory. The masked villain continued. Izuku flinched a bit, but luckily they didn't notice. "These guys are Yakuza. You two lost my property," the masked villain growled. "The only reason you two are still alive is because killing you here would be an inconvenience. We're going to leave. Put everything back where you found it. And once we're done, we're going to search for Eri. If she's not found by the end of the day, you two are dead, understand?" "Yes, sir," the two other villains said before running out of the room. The masked villain started walking out of the room. Izuku heard a strange sound. It was like the door breaking ... but in reverse. "This room disgusts me," the masked villain said before Izuku heard the door close. "Wait, didn't he break down my door?" Izuku wanted to see what just happened, but he knew better than to move until he was sure the villains were gone. He heard the villains move around in the house for about a minute longer before he heard the sound of the front door closing. Izuku still didn't move for a few minutes. He wanted to be absolutely sure they were gone. After a few minutes, he heard nothing. Izuku jumped out of bed and ran towards the pile of clothes. After half a minute of throwing his clothes everywhere, he found Eri. She was stiff still, tears flowing out of her eyes. She held one of his socks in her death grip and used to muffle any noises coming out of her mouth. She had been paralyzed with fear. Izuku wasted no time kneeling down and embracing her. The girl dropped the sock and wrapped her arms around him, before sobbing into his chest. "It's okay," Izuku soothed her, "they're gone now. It's over." Sometime later the police arrived, not too long after. Izuku gave the police a full description of what happened, as well as giving them the video from his phone. After seeing the video they told him to stay put and said they needed to call someone in. They tried to take Eri, so they could return her to her parents. But Eri refused to leave his side, saying that she didn't have any parents. So they just left her with him. Izuku sat on the couch, with Eri clinging to his arm as tightly as she could. Thank you," Eri whispered to him. Izuku smiled gently at her. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing what anyone would do." Eri shook her head. "People didn't help me. Only you. Only you." Eri buried herself in his arms, trying to keep herself from crying. Izuku started petting her head to comfort her. "Izuku Midoriya?" Izuku looked up and saw a man in a detective coat. "My name is Detective Namasa." The man introduced himself. "Oh, hi," Izuku said. "I'll cut to the chase. The people who were chasing that girl were part of the Yakuza," Namasa said. And this man Namasa pulled out Izuku's phone, which zoomed in on the masked villain. "Is Kaichizaki, aka Overhaul, leader the Yakuza?" "The leader of Yakuza," Izuku repeated in fear and amazement. He knew the Yakuza was much weaker than it was a long time ago, but they were still a sizable crime gang. Why would the leader of the Yakuza come here? What would they want Eri for? "I don't know. We haven't found any record of Eri or anyone like her so far," Namasa explained. "I think the only person who can tell us what he wanted is her." They both looked at Eri, who shied away further into Izuku's arm. "Eri. It's okay. We need you to tell us what Overhaul wanted you for," Izuku said. "We've been looking for a way to put Overhaul away for a long time," Namasa said. "But he's got people on the inside. The video you gave us should be enough for us to arrest him and put him in under interrogation, but we'll need a bit more. If we want to get a search warrant, then we'll need a bit more to go on. You hear that, Eri? If you tell him what he wanted you for, they'll be able to put Overhaul in jail. And he'll never be able to hurt you again," Izuku encouraged her. Eri looked up into his eyes, hopeful. "You promise?" Izuku nodded. "I promise." Eri turned towards Namasa, her eyes filled with hesitance and distrust. "You believe me?" Namasa gave her the kindest smile he could. "I have a lie detecting quirk. So long as you're telling the truth, I'll know." Eri seemed hesitant. But with some more encouragement from Izuku, she eventually talked. Half an hour later, Izuku wanted to vomit. Namasa had to try his hardest to keep in composure throughout the whole story. Throughout his entire career, he had never heard something so horrible happen to a child. It was a miracle she was as sane as she seemed to be. Well, that will definitely put him behind bars, forever. Namasa spoke directly to Eri. "You've been very brave, and very strong. We'll make sure he never hurts anyone like he's hurt you, ever again." Namasa then turned to Izuku. "We'd like to put both you and her into witness protection, until the Yakuza is dealt with. We'll contact your guardian immediately to notify her and ask her permission. Thank you for saving her, and for helping us put a stop to them once and for all. I'm just glad everything worked out." Izuku sighed, a worried expression on his face. "But Eri. What's going to happen to her?" Namasa frowned. "For now we've decided to leave her with you for the duration of the witness protection. After that. We'll figure it out from there." Izuku nodded. He didn't want to leave Eri. Not after what he just heard. And it seemed like she didn't want to be away from him either. He'd be with her. And protect her. For as long as he was able. A few hours later, after a panicked call from Inko and being moved to a new location, Izuku laid down on the bed of where he would be staying for the foreseeable future. Eri was still clinging to his waist, refusing to let go. "Eri?" Izuku said. "Are you okay?" "Why?" Eri asked. "Huh?" Izuku was confused by the response. "Why are you being so nice to me?" Eri asked, tears starting to roll down her eyes. "I'm a monster, I'm cursed," Eri gasped when she felt Izuku pull her off of him and hold her up to eye level. "Don't ever say that," Izuku told her. "Everything Overhaul told you was a lie. You're not a monster. And your quirk is not a curse." But Eri protested. "Eri, Who do you trust more? Me, or Overhaul? Izuku asked. Why you, Eri responded. Then trust that what I'm saying is true. Izuku hugged her tightly. You deserve to be saved. Eri broke down, crying. Letting out everything she had, bottled up inside. It's okay. You're safe now. Izuku reassured her. A week and a half later, Overhaul had been arrested. Apparently, he had let himself get arrested willingly, thinking that they had nothing on him and that his lawyers would get him out of trouble. He was wrong. And despite his powerful quirk and clever lies, it didn't matter much thanks to Nemasa and Eraserhead. The heroes had been giving the go-ahead to search the Yakuza's base and had taken down the rest of the criminal group. Izuku had been elated once he heard the news, and was glad to hear that he would be out of witness protection by the end of the month. Izuku was glad he would be going home, but he would miss getting to meet the new heroes that would be guarding him. He'd met Kamui Woods, Headshot, and even Best, Genist. And he got all their autographs. But the thing that concerned him the most, what concerned him most is what would happen to Eri. He didn't want to leave her. And she definitely didn't want to leave him. Evidenced by the fact she didn't let go of him for a moment, so Izuku was concerned that they might be torn apart. Especially because of how dangerous Eri's quirk was. Izuku shook his head. He wouldn't worry about that right now. He couldn't affect what would happen then, now. And worrying would only make Eri unhappy. Right now he would keep himself distracted by making apple pie and wondering what hero would be watching them this week. Eri watched with intense interest, and a watering mouth, as Izuku took the pie out of the oven. Now Eri, whenever you take something out of the oven you always have to use oven mitts, Izuku instructed her as he picked up the pie. Otherwise you lie here. Suddenly All Might barged through the door. Izuku almost dropped the pie, but imagining Eri's disappointed face if he dropped it he found the strength to keep his grip. All Might? Izuku gasped. Wow, why huh? Haha. We meet again, young Midoriya. All Might said. And, hello to you too, young Eri. Eri hid behind Izuku's leg. All Might turned to Izuku, smiling brightly at him. It seems I was wrong about you not being a hero. For you to have proved me wrong so quickly is rather astounding. Whammy? A hero? Izuku was having a mental breakdown, his hands were shaking but he still held on to that pie. I'm not a hero I just did what was right. As a hero should. All Might said. There are many people who wouldn't have done what you did, and many others who wouldn't have succeeded. You saved this little girl, and helped take down one of the most notorious villain groups in the city. If that isn't heroism I don't know what is. Izuku wasn't able to respond, his mind overheating had left him gaping like a fish. Being a hero isn't just getting a hero license and becoming a pro. Being a hero is about helping people, and doing the right thing. All Might knelt down and looked at Eri. Young Eri, do you think young Midoriya is a hero? Yes. Eri answered, with the most determined look Izuku had ever seen on her face. Izuku is my hero. Eri. Izuku was so touched hearing her say that. Tears had started running down his face and his knees were shaking. He had never felt such a swell of positive emotions in his life. It was overwhelming. You said heroes save people. Eri reminded him. So that means you're a hero, right? You're right, young Eri. All Might added. Young Midoriya, even if you're not a pro hero, you're her hero. Izuku fell to his knees. All Might caught the pie before it fell to the floor. There, young Midoriya, dry those tears. And let us celebrate. With apple pie. All Might shouted. After Izuku stopped crying, the three of them sat down and enjoyed the apple pie. Hey, All Might? Izuku whispered to his hero. Yes, young Midoriya. All Might responded. You signed up to protect us for the week, right? Izuku asked, receiving a head nod as confirmation. How are you going to keep your other form a secret from Eri? Crap. All Might said, just before his time ran out. Weeks later, Izuku nervously twiddled his thumbs as he sat in the blank room. After the witness protection had ended, someone who was apparently with the government had asked Izuku to speak with them. Alone. Eri was, of course, absolutely adamant about not leaving his side no matter what. It took a lot of convincing, and promises of apple-based candy, to get Eri to stay in the room next to Izuku. The door opened and in walked a woman in a suit. She looks like she hadn't slept in days and that she would much rather be anywhere else but here. Hello, Izuku Midoriya. My name is Kyodon, the woman said. I represent the OPCCC branch of the government. Izuku gave her a confused look. What? The overly powerful Children Care and Containment Branch. Nami sighed. Haven't heard of us, not surprised. We've basically had our balls chopped off when it comes to our capabilities, in comparison to what we used to be able to do. We don't actually get to do all that much nowadays. Oh. So this is about Eri, right? Izuku guessed. Yup. You want her? Nami asked. Huh? Izuku was confused by her bluntness. Eri, you want her? She doesn't have any parents, so you want to take her? Nami asked again. Oh, of course. Izuku answered quickly. Okay, Nami said, as she started looking through her bag. Wait, what? Izuku's eyes were wide. I said okay, you can keep her, Nami repeated, not looking up from her bag. It's that easy? Izuku asked in disbelief. Listen, kid, do you know how hard our job usually is? Nami asked. First we have to find these kids, then since we can't take them to an orphanage due to their overly powerful quirk, we have to look all over Japan for people who are willing to risk their lives or well-being taking in these kids. Do you have any idea how hard that is? You wanting to take her saves us so much time and effort. Oh, Izuku said. I feel like there should be some more steps here. Well, you thought wrong. Here it is. Nami finally found what she was looking for. She pulled out her contract and put it in front of Izuku. Just sign here and we're done. Wait, shouldn't my mom be signing this? Izuku asked as he was handed a pen. She'll be signing something similar, but since she's away and seemingly will be away quite often, you'll be taking care of her the most, so you'll be signing this, Nami explained. Oh. This whole situation had not played out as Izuku expected. But if it meant he got to take care of Eri, he would take it. He read through the contract. Most of it was just making it clear that he would be risking his life. It said that he would receive special equipment to help protect himself, as well as... Izuku's eyes widened. That's a lot of money. And does this say you'll be giving this to me, monthly? Of course it is. Nami rolled her eyes. Like I said, we have to convince people to take these kids in. So of course we have to cover the cost of taking care of the child, as well as giving them compensation for assisting us. After all, if you take care of a child well, then there is less of a chance that the child will become a villain in the future. And I don't think I need to tell you why the government is interested in keeping children with overly powerful quirks from becoming villains. Izuku nodded. While he didn't like the idea of people thinking Eri could become a villain, he understood where she was coming from. Well, the contract was basically nothing but beneficial to him and Eri, so he had no reason to refuse. And after signing, the Midoriya family gained a new member. Chapter 2, Set in Stone. Izuku blinked. And then he blinked again. He rubbed his eyes and then opened them again. Nope. They were still there. To say Izuku was nervous when some people came and started bringing crates into his house. He had started assuming it was a bomb and was ready to get Eri and run when one of the delivery men handed him a phone. Hello? Izuku said. Is this Izuku Midoriya? Asked a voice over the phone. Why yes. Izuku said. Good. We would just like to send you our sincere thanks for helping out with the overhaul problem. How do you know about that? Izuku asked. While the news did find out about and reported his story, They had kept his and Eri's identities a secret, making sure to censor their pictures and not say their names. Let's just say, we have our ways. The man said. Anyway, Overhaul was a pain in the ass. We've been wanting to get rid of him for years. But that quirk of his was always a pain in the ass. But thanks to you, the heroes got him, and put him in special cuffs that wouldn't let the bastard use his quirk. Meaning he couldn't fix himself, after his unfortunate accident. What? Izuku shouted in shock. So, as thanks, me and my associates decided to chip in, and get you something nice. The man said. Good luck, kid. Enjoy the cash. The man hung up. The next day. Money. Money is what was in the crates. Lots, and lots of money. After a few calls and some inspections by the police, Izuku found out a few things. Firstly, Overhaul was, indeed, dead. He was assassinated while being transported to prison. Probably by an assortment of criminal groups that hated his guts. Secondly, those criminal groups were probably the ones who sent Izuku the cash. Despite this, the police couldn't find anything illegal about it, so strangely enough, Izuku was allowed to keep it. After his mother heard the news that they were now rich, she quit her job and headed back home, where she promptly took some of the money, saying she was going to start up her own company, so they would never need to worry about money again. Izuku had used this money, along with the money he was receiving from the government, to buy Eri everything she needed. A bed, clothes, food. The first time Izuku cooked for her, she cried from sheer happiness, making Izuku cry. Too, Eri had never been as happy as she was with Izuku. And Izuku had gotten out of his funk and was honestly happier than he had been in a long time. Although the fact that he still hadn't gone to school since then and therefore hadn't been bullied, but there was still one issue. Hey Eri, why don't we go to the park? Izuku asked her while they watched television. Eri's frown deepened. And her eyes moved away from him. She would never tell him no, not unless he asked to move away from him, so Izuku would have to look at her expression to discern his answer. The poor girl was still obviously traumatized by the time she spent with Overhaul. She would never leave him for a second unless he had to use the bathroom. She would often wake up in the middle of the night crying from her nightmares, and she would always seem scared whenever he went outside. She would cling tightly to him, whimpering whenever anyone got too close. To her, going outside was like being dumped in the ocean. The people were like sharks to her, and Izuku was her life preserver. The only reason she went outside at all was seemingly because her fear of going outside was beat out by her fear of leaving Izuku. And while Izuku could sympathize with the feeling of wanting to stay in your house forever, he knew that it wasn't healthy. She needed sunlight. She needed to run around and exercise. She needed friends. She needed to smile. Izuku knew how it felt to live a life without friends. He didn't want that for his new little sister. But he couldn't force her. He had to convince her. How about this? We can go on a walk through the park to the grocery store and we can buy the ingredients for candied apples. Izuku suggested. Eri's eyes widened with wonder. Candied apples? They're like regular apples, but much sweeter and tastier. Izuku smiled as he saw her eyes widen and her mouth water. But, in order to get in the ingredients to make it, we have to go outside. Eri thought about it for a minute, making her adorable little thinking face that resembled Izuku's. And eventually, hesitantly, nodded her head. Izuku smiled. It was progress. Slow progress. But progress nonetheless. Later, at the grocery store. The walk through the park was uneventful. Which was actually a good thing. Eri probably couldn't handle something too exciting with her extreme anxiety. The two of them walked through the store grabbing the ingredients. Eri would help look for them, grabbing them if they were on a low shelf and pointing them out if they were on a high one. All in all, it seemed like a pretty good day so far. Okay Eri, the next thing we have to look for is Oaf. Izuku suddenly bumped into someone. Oh, I'm so sorry. Izuku turned to look at the person and saw that they were a stone statue. Now, Either the store had a weird taste in decor, or this was a villain attack. Izuku looked to his left and saw a woman running away. The woman looked behind her, then suddenly her feet turned to stone. The stone quickly crawled up her body until she had been transformed into a statue. Izuku immediately slid back into the aisle he was in, grabbing Eri and pushing her behind him. "Izuku, what's happening?" Eri said in a hushed, fear-filled tone. "Everything's going to be okay, just be quiet," Izuku whispered to her. He leaned out and looked out at the rest of the store. He saw a man, holding a small girl like a weapon while also holding a gun to her head. She looked like she was a little older than Eri, and all Izuku could tell from here is that she had green snakes for hair. The man had her tied up so she couldn't struggle too much. The man held the girl up the cashiers, and they all turned to stone. It looks like he's using the girl's quirk as a weapon, and is using the gun to make her do what he says. Izuku's fist balled up in anger. This was now two people who tried to use children as weapons, both within the span of less than 2 months. Izuku's brain cycled through his options. He needed to take down this guy without letting him see him, otherwise, he would get turned to stone, or he would threaten to hurt the girl. Then he remembered. The tranq gun. The government had issued him a tranquilizer gun, to use on Eri in case her quirk ever got out of control. And while he hated the idea of using it on her, he had to concede that Eri's quirk was dangerous to both himself and the people around her. And if she ever hurt anyone with her quirk again, then she may never recover. Izuku pulled the gun out of his pocket. He looked at the man. He had put down the little girl and started taking cash from the registers. He aimed the gun at the man. His hands were shaking. I can't do this. What if I miss? He'll come for me and Eri. I can't. Izuku looked at the girl. She was far away, so he couldn't see her all too well. But he could see that she was shaking. She was scared. She needed help. Izuku lined up the shot and fired. Gah! The man shouted as the dart landed right in his back. He looked at Izuku and went to pick up the girl. Izuku was scared for a moment, but then the man collapsed, reaching for the girl before passing out. Izuku sighed in relief, his shaking hands dropping the gun. He ran over to the girl. For a second, he could see her eyes. They looked like emeralds and shined at him, and for a moment Izuku could see a look of admiration and hope. And then he felt his feet go cold, and then his legs, then his torso, and then he was stone. A day later. Izuku blinked. This wasn't the grocery store. Izuku was in a hospital room, lying in bed, with a doctor looking down at him. "Oh good, you woke up. Right on time," the doctor said. "What? What happened? Where am I?" Izuku was freaked out. One moment he was at the grocery store rescuing that girl, and now he was here. Where's Eri? Where's the girl? Why, look down, the doctor said. Izuku looked down. Oh. The two girls were sleeping on his legs, using their arms hold on to him and each other. He looked at the two in shock. Wait, Eri hates it when people besides me touch her. The poor boy was so confused, and so he looked to the doctor for answers. Judging by your expression, you don't know any of what happened in the last 24 hours, so let me inform you, the doctor said kindly. After taking down the villain robbing the grocery store, you were put under the effect of this girl's quirk, petrification. It's a quirk that activates when the victim looks at the user's eyes and turns the victim to stone for exactly 24 hours. The police arrived and tried to take the girl. However, the other young girl attached to your leg refused to let her go, as well as refusing to be separated from yourself. Given the dangerousness of both their quirks, we just decided it was easier to let them go with you. What? Izuku looked at the man in disbelief. Wait. You said Eri didn't want her to go? That's correct, the doctor said. The two held on to each other the entire time the police tried to separate them, and let's just say, it didn't end well for the police officers. Some pro-heroes came around and one of them suggested that we just let them ride with you to the hospital. After that, the other girl was much more cooperative and told us that the people she petrified would only remain as such for a day. Izuku was stupefied. What he was saying didn't seem like something Eri would do. What had happened while he was petrified? It looked like he was going to find out soon because all his stirring had caused the two girls to wake up. Izuku? Eri rubbed her eyes and yawned. Is Mr. awake? The other girl said. Once the two girls fully woke up and realized Izuku was no longer stone, they immediately started to swarm him. You're not stone. Eri hugged him tightly. You're awake. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, I'm so sorry. The girl apologized profusely. Izuku noticed she was wearing a blindfold. It's fine, I'm fine. Izuku tried to reassure them both. Eventually, the two stopped fussing over the two of them and the doctor spoke. Seeing as you're fine, I'll leave you three for now. Apparently, someone from the government wanted to speak to you, so they should be here shortly, the doctor said, before taking his leave. Izuku turned his focus to the girl with snake hair. Hello. Hi. The girl smiled, awkwardly. My name is Kesseki. I'm sorry for accidentally using my quirk on you. It's okay. You didn't mean to do it and I'm not hurt or anything, Izuku said. Kesseki looked shocked. Oh really? Normally when I accidentally use my quirk on people they get super mad and call me a monster. Izuku is a nice person. He would never call you a monster, Eri said with a look of determination. Surprising Izuku. Eri. You seem to get along with this girl really well. What happened while I was a statue? Izuku asked. Oh, I can tell you. Kesseki hopped up and down excitedly. The snakes in her rose up with her mood. Flashback, right? Izuku turned to stone. Izuku. Eri gasped. She looked at the statue her brother had turned into in horror. Could he hear her? Was he okay? Was he dead? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, shouted Kesseki, who now had her eyes closed. Eri looked at the girl. She hurt Izuku. She's a mons. Then, Eri realized something. She was crying. Apologizing every few seconds. It was obvious she didn't mean to hurt Izuku. Or any of these people. That bad man forced her to. He used her quirk to hurt people. Like Overhaul did to her. And she was about to call her a monster. I'm sorry. Eri apologized, tears starting to well up in her eyes from how emotionally overwhelming this was. What? Kesseki stopped crying and apologizing out of confusion. Why are you apologizing? I was going to call you a monster, Eri cried. That's fine. A lot of people call me a monster when I use my quirk. Kesseki tried to comfort her. I'm used to it, but you didn't mean to do those bad things, alright? Eri asked her. No, I would never. My quirk is just a bit hard to control and this guy took me and started using me to do bad things, Kesseki explained. I guess you could say he wanted ... stone hard cash. Silence. Nothing. You could say he felt like a rock. The snake girl gave a nervous grin. Still nothing. Wow, tough crowd, Kesseki said. Thank you though, for not trying to hit me for turning your friend to stone. Izuku said that if you hurt people by accident, then you're not a bad person, Eri said. Oh really? Well, he sounds like a nice guy. Kesseki smiled at Eri, or at least tried to. She still had her eyes closed. Eri looked at the stone statue of Izuku sadly. You don't really need to worry about him. They turn back after a day, Kesseki explained. Eri looked at her hopefully. Really? Really? Kesseki chirped. It's the truth, said in stone. Eri started crying again, but this time relieved. She thought she had lost her new family so soon after she got them. Hey, could you help me out a little? Kesseki asked. I'm kinda tied up at the moment. Eri tried to help untie her, but it was pretty clear that she didn't know how to untie the tight knots, so eventually Kesseki and Eri just tried to tear the rope apart, Eri using her horn and Kesseki using her snakes. Back to the present. After that, we talked a whole bunch and now we're friends. Kesseki smiled brightly. Friends? Eri stuttered. Kesseki turned to her and frowned. Are we not? I never had a friend before. Eri muttered. Me neither. Kesseki said excitedly. People are usually scared of my quirk or the snakes in my hair. But my snakes aren't actually that scary. Izuku watched the two interact with slight shock. I didn't think anyone could get Eri to open up like this. It''s ... kind of amazing. Izuku smiled at the snake-haired girl. Thank you, for getting along so well with Eri. No. Thank you for taking down that thug. Kesseki said. If you hadn't done that, he would have forced me to use my quirk on even more people. And that's just cold. Stone cold. You'd have to have a heart of stone to do such a thing. That guy was a real snake. You really like puns, Izuku noted. Well, you're welcome. It really wasn't much of a big deal. No, it was a huge deal. Kesseki stood up on the bed and bowed. I am in your eternal debt. You really don't need to do that, Izuku said. Nope. Too late. I already said it. It lasts for eternity now. Kesseki shook her head. No, take backsies. It's if you say set in stone, I'm going to bang my head on the wall until I pass out. The three of them looked towards the door and saw Nami standing there. Miss Nami? What are you doing here? Izuku asked. What am I doing here? There's a kid who can turn people to stone by looking at him. What do you think I'm doing here? Nami mocked. Oh, yeah, that makes sense, Izuku said. Wait, shouldn't you take her back to her parents? My parents threw me out, Kesseki explained. They said I can be the world's problem instead of theirs. That's horrible. Izuku was disgusted. At the very least, if you weren't going to take care of your child, you could give them to someone who could. Or an orphanage. I know, right? They could have just called us. Makes everyone's lives easier. Nami groaned. Speaking of making everyone's lives easier. Nami pulled up a chair. Oh, poor us. We may have saved this poor girl, but now we must take her away to search for a home for her. She and Eri may never see each other again. If only there was someone close by who could take her in and give her food and shelter. Someone who has recently come into a whole lot of money and is really good with kids. Her acting was so half-assed and non-subtle, that Izuku immediately got what she was trying to do. Izuku sighed and shook his head. I can't just make that decision on my own, you'd have to ask my mom first. Not really, Nami said smugly. The age required to sign the contract that lets you take her in was lowered to about your age. That doesn't sound right, Izuku said skeptically. Like I said, the big government doesn't really care much about our branch anymore, so we can get away with a lot of stuff when they're not looking, Nami explained. And oh look, I have one of those contracts right here. Nami took out the contract and shoved it in Izuku's face along with a pen. Wait, Mr. Izuku's gonna take care of me? I don't have to eat garbage anymore? Kesseki's eyes widened in excitement. Yes. Best day ever. Izuku cringed at her excitement. There was no chance he was gonna say no to that. Especially after seeing how well she got along with Eri, but still. I should really ask my mom about this. Izuku was still hesitant. I mean that might take a while, and in the meantime, we would have to take the girl away, Nami said with fake sadness. Eri didn't say anything, but judging by the expression on her face, she was not happy with the idea, and she looked at Izuku pleadingly. Looked at her for a moment, before sighing and signing the contract. I am such a pushover. Yes. Nami said before snatching the contract away. Haha. Another day of work thoroughly avoided. Congrats on your new sister, kids. Sister? Oh. Iri's my sister now. Great. Kesseki giggled as she grabbed Iri and locked her into a hug. We're gonna have so much fun. Iri seemed confused but also kinda happy. Oh, and here's your phone back. Nami tossed him his phone. Wait, I could have just called Mom with this. Wait, why did you have my phone in the first place? Izuku shouted in confusion. Because if you called your mom, she might have said no, Nami explained. So I took your phone so I could pressure you into signing this thing. That sounds illegal. Izuku pointed out. Yeah, but I know you're a pushover good guy type of person, so you're not gonna do anything about it, Nami said. Anyway, later losers. With that, she ran out of the room at speeds that would make All Might's jaw drop. How is that woman a government agent? Izuku himself. He looked at the pair of celebrating girls, and by that I mean that Kesseki was holding Iri while jumping on the bed and Iri was enthusiastically letting her, before looking down at his phone. He sighed before turning on his phone and calling his mother. Izuku? Are you okay? I heard you were in the hospital. What happened? Are you hurt? Inko panicked over the phone. I'm okay, Mom. It's nothing, but I have a new sister now. Izuku said ... What? Chapter 3, Double Trouble. You know, Iri said as she put her second to last card on the pile. Darn it. Izuku, we have to stop her. She's going to win. Kesseki shouted out. I put down a +2 card. Izuku, it's your turn. Was now wearing a special visitor provided by the government, that would make sure no one turned to stone, while at the same time allowing her to see, albeit barely. I don't have a +2. Sorry, Izuku admitted, drawing 2 cards. I win, Iri said, putting down her last card. Nah, Kesseki, or for short, fell down, dramatically, before immediately getting back up, cipher as always. Okay. Nice work, Iri. Thanks. That was fun. Iri said, her lips moving upward very slightly into something that wasn't quite a smile. Well, as long as you two had fun. Izuku smiled. Honestly, he had fun as well. Most of the games they tried to play together suffered from the fact that neither Iri nor K had played a game, ever, so Izuku would beat them easily. But thanks to the randomness and simplicity of Yuno, they were able to play on mostly even ground. Again. Chanted. One more time. This time I know I'll win. Despite the whole incident with the villain using her and being homeless before then, was an extremely positive ball of energy, which was welcomed in Izuku and Iri's lives. Looks like we'll have to stop to make food, Izuku said, hearing K's stomach growl. Oh. Can we have eggs? K said. K loved eggs. Not as much as Iri loved apples, but it was easily the girl's favorite food. Izuku thought about it. I want to make something for her, but I don't want to leave Iri out. Suddenly he got an idea. I got it. How about tamagoyaki? It was both sweet and made of eggs. So, they should like it. Yay. I don't know what that is. Cheered. Does it have eggs? Yes. You should like it too, Iri, it's sweet. Izuku said. Can I crack the eggs this time? This time I'll do it just like you. K looked at him with pure determination. Sure. Izuku smiled at her. You want to help too, Iri? Iri nodded. And the three of them went into the kitchen. A little while later, the cooking went rather smoothly. Inko was a skilled cook, and Izuku had picked up on a lot of those skills. He did have a lot of free time growing up due to his lack of friends. Iri and K didn't do all too much for the most part. They cracked the eggs, Izuku later had to pick the eggshell pieces out, and they popped the air bubbles while they were cooking. They mostly watched him closely, while he was cooking. And the look of admiration on their faces as they watched him made him feel better about himself than he had felt in years. This is great. K shouted. You're the best cook ever, Izuku. This is ... excellent. Iri nodded as she stuffed her face like an adorable chipmunk. I guess I'm pretty okay. Izuku blushed from the praise. Mom is a much better cook than me. If new mom can make better food than this, then I might explode from goodness. Had stars in her eyes. Izuku's better, Eri muttered. Huh? Izuku stopped eating for a moment. I like Izuku's cooking better, Eri said. Izuku turned into a flustered mess. Hey, I have an idea. Said. We could cook a whole lot of food. And then sell it in the park and make lots of money. We don't really need money, Izuku explained to her. They had more than enough money from the gift he had gotten, plus Mom's startup company was doing decently well, and he was still getting money from the government for both Eri and K. They were rolling in the dough. Oh. K paused for a moment. Then why don't we do that anyway? It sounds fun. Eri seemed uncomfortable about going outside to the park all day. I mean, we could do that. Izuku remembered he still had all the licenses to do that from the times he had tried to sell lemonade, had to pay for those notebooks somehow. But only if Eri wanted to. Shot Eri a puppy dog look. Eri still seemed hesitant, but her resolve was breaking. Then Snakes gave her a puppy dog look as well. Izuku didn't even know Snakes could do that. We could do it. Eri caved. Yay. And her snakes cheered, before running over and hugging her. Thanks, sis. Izuku swore. Eri almost smiled. They then spent the next few hours talking about which foods they would make. 2 days later, after buying all the food and cooking it, Izuku and his sisters bought some tables and laid out the food. Then they set up a large umbrella to protect both them and the food from the sun. Alright, let's make some money. Cheered. Eri nodded determinedly. They had used the tables to create a small square around them, and for some reason standing inside the square made her more confident than she normally would be when she was outside, like it was some kind of barrier. It could also do with the fact that she was holding a candy apple. Izuku smiled and shook his head. What the two girls didn't know was that Izuku priced these things in such a way that they would be operating at a loss. The cost to buy and make the food would be more than any amount of money they made from selling it. After all, it's not like they needed the money, and it would be more fun for the two of them if they felt like they were selling a lot, so he needed to lower the pricing. Suddenly they heard someone breathing in heavily. They turned and saw a jogger running towards them. The jogger stopped at one of their tables. Hey how much is he? Stopped when he looked at K's smiling face. Or rather her snakes. The jogger stopped and looked uncomfortable at the snakes for a moment until Izuku spoke up. Is everything okay, sir? Izuku asked, wanting him to stop looking at K's snakes. Yeah. How much is a watermelon slice? He asked. $1. K said, holding up one finger. The jogger looked at Izuku as if to make sure the price was correct. Izuku nodded in confirmation, and the jogger handed over $1. Eri handed the melon over to the jogger and he went on his way. What a nice guy, K said. Their sales from that point on progressed steadily. One woman was on her cheat day and bought some of their candy apples and chocolate-covered bananas. A nerdy-looking kid talked their ears off about how he was going to get the top test score in his school, before buying some of their fish cakes and rice balls. A group of delinquents bought some of their more filling dishes. They made a big sale, when a family decided to suddenly have a picnic with their kids, and bought a ton of food. All in all, things have been progressing well. Except for one thing. I think I'll pass. A man said as he looked at K, before walking very quickly in the other direction. K frowned, the snakes in her hair slithering down. I think I may be scaring some of the customers. While having weird hair was not uncommon nowadays, having a full head of hair made up of living snakes was something else. Sure, there was Uwabami who had 3 snakes in her hair, but that was only 3 and not dozens of them that were constantly moving and slithering. Also, when people looked at Uwabami, her hair was typically not what they looked at. People, not many people but a few of them, saw K and were scared. Off. Much to Izuku's dismay. Oh. Maybe I could put on a hat. Then people won't see my snakes. Suggested. And Izuku started petting the snakes in her hair. The reptiles gave a pleased hiss while blushed slightly. Izuku? Said. You already have to hide enough of yourself, Izuku told her. If they can't see how cute my little sister is, then I don't want their money. Why yeah. Eri ran up and started petting the snakes as well. Your snakes are pretty. Izuku. Eri was stunned for a moment. No one had ever called her cute or pretty before. They called her scary or ugly. She had learned to not let it get to her, but being complimented like this ... it made her really, really happy. Tears welled up in her eyes, and a big stupid grin appeared on her face. I love you guys. Wrapped her tiny arms around Eri and Izuku and cried happy tears while laughing. Izuku started laughing with her, and while Eri didn't laugh, the smallest of smiles appeared on her face. Unfortunately, Izuku didn't notice this. Suddenly, a giant shadow loomed over them. Hey am I interrupting something? Asked a male voice. Izuku turned to the sound of the voice, his eyes still closed as he wiped his face. Sorry, sir, what do you? Izuku opened his eyes, and in front of him was the pro hero Fatgum. Fatgum. Izuku freaked out. Oh my god, it's really you. It's such an honor to meet you. I've seen your work and it's really impressive. Honestly, I think it's a crime you're not rated higher because of all the things you do the community, and you're really good with kids and wait. Didn't also help with the whoa kid, slow down. Fatgum said. You're talking a bit too fast. Also, why aren't you kids in class? Well Izuku paused. That's a bit difficult to explain, you see. Wait a minute. Fatgum squinted at Izuku and Eri. Oh yeah. You're those kids from the Yakuza case. Why yeah, Izuku said. You were one of the heroes that helped take down the Yakuza, right? You got right. Taught those children hurting ball. Fatgum stopped and looked at the two children in front of him. Add guys a thing or two. You stopped overhaul? Eri asked him, peeking out from behind Izuku. You bet. Fatgum said ... Thank you. Eri muttered. It was my pleasure. Fatgum smiled at her. Now, what are you three doing out of school? Well, Eri's not ready for school yet, and we just took in recently, so we don't know about her, Izuku explained. And me ... Nothing good happens when I go to school ... And someone needs to watch these two anyway, and I'll still be able to graduate anyway. The school wouldn't miss a chance to get rid of me. Why is that? Fatgum frowned. I'm quirkless, Izuku admitted, looking away from the hero as if he was ashamed of himself. Those discriminatory jerks. Fatgum said, angered that someone was being mistreated because of something they couldn't control. I can't stand it when people look down on others because of their quirk ... or lack of quirk in this case. It's fine, Izuku said. I'm used to it by now. Well, you shouldn't be. Fatgum said. Quirk discrimination is illegal and wrong. Technically it's not quirk discrimination if I don't have a quirk, Izuku muttered. That's not true. Fatgum dismissed. Kid, why don't you tell me what school you go to and I'll throw the book at him. Why, you don't really need to do that. Izuku waved his arms in front of him. I wouldn't want to cause anyone any trouble, and you're probably really busy anyway. Not really, I was just finishing my patrol, Fatgum said. Kid, being abused is not okay. If you're used to it, then it must be worse than I thought. Are you getting bullied, kid? Be bullied? No, of course not. Izuku started sweating profusely, looking away from the hero as he scratched the back of his head, basically giving all the signs that he was lying. Fatgum gave him a serious look. Kid, you chomp. Fatgum paused for a moment, then he looked at his side. Biting down on the hero's fat was a small boy, about 8 or 9. He was gnawing on Fatgum's fat as if trying to eat him. You know this kid? Fatgum asked Izuku, receiving a no in response. Fatgum tried to pull the kid off of him. But to his surprise, his bite was extremely strong. As the hero pulled, all he did was stretch out his fat. "Hey kid, you mind letting go of my fat? I probably don't taste so good," Fatgum said as he got a better look at the kid. "Wait a minute, you don't look too good either kid." "Meowt," the kid groaned. His eyes were glazed over, and his skin was a rotted green color. He also looked like he had several cuts all over his body, and something about the kid didn't look right. Like some of his flesh was starting to rot, like a zombie. "It looks like he's in some kind of trance," Izuku pointed out. "And he looks hurt. He needs meat." To the left of them, what looked like a small girl wearing a cloak made of rags. "He, Huff, needs, puff, meat." The girl was out of breath. By the time she reached them, she collapsed on the floor. Izuku went out to go check on her. "Are you okay? Thirsty? Need food and blood?" The girl groaned. "Need to give Fu meat, drink his blood." Izuku was confused by her rambling, but he did understand that the boy needed meat. He picked up a sausage from one of the food trays and put it in front of the boy's face. The kid, Fu as the girl called him, sniffed the meat for a few seconds, before letting go of Fatgum's fat and chomping down on it, devouring it whole. Izuku motioned for more meat, and Eri started handing him more meat. Eventually, after feeding him nearly all their meat dishes, the boy's eyes became less glazed and slightly more focused, and his flesh started to heal itself. The cuts closed up and the rotted flesh fell off. His body regenerated the missing flesh, replacing it with new, non-rotting flesh. Burp. The boy let out a massive burp, surprising everyone around him. "Excuse me. Where am I?" "Looks like he's back," Fatgum said. "Back. Oh. Did I go berserk again?" the boy asked in a monotone. "Did I hurt anyone?" "Nah, you bit down on some of my fat, but I'm made of pretty tough stuff." Fatgum punched his fat to prove his point. "Your friend over there seems like she's in pretty bad shape though." Fu looked over at the fallen girl. Then he did something they didn't expect. He walked over to the girl, picked up her head, then held out his arm in front of her mouth. The girl opened her mouth, revealing a pair of sharp fangs, before biting down into the boy's arm. The rest of them looked on in a mix of confusion and concern as the girl seemingly drank the boy's blood, which seemingly didn't faze him in the slightest. After a few minutes, the girl stopped drinking, and then jumped back on her feet. "Ahaha! I'm back. The great vampire Lord Kiba has returned to full strength," the girl proclaimed, as has her loyal servant Fu. "Together now we shall take over the world." The girl, whose name was apparently Kiba, looked at the rest of them. "It seems I have you to thank for our resurrection, lowly food merchants, and depressingly fat man." "Lowly food merchants?" Izuku repeated. "Depressingly fat?" Fatgum said. "For your act of generosity, I promise you will all hold power in my new world order and growl." The girl stopped as her stomach growled rather loudly. Her face turned pink in embarrassment, as she spoke again. Lowly food merchants. Could you find it within your hearts to spare me some more of your lovely consumables? Particularly anything colored red?" Many hours later, after feeding them a significant amount of food, Fatgum had escorted them to the police station so they could contact the kids' parents. Izuku had decided to wait at the station to make sure the kids were okay, letting Fatgum and the girls wrap up the food stand. Izuku sat at the station for quite some time. He had been here for several hours and was starting to wonder what was taking these kids' parents so long. Then a thought crossed his mind. What if they don't have parents? He started to sweat nervously. No, I can't have run into even more orphan children in such a short period of time. The odds of that would be low, to say the least. It's impossible. Right. Wrong. Izuku heard the doors of the police station open, and a chill went up his spine, as none other than Nami walked in. She spotted him and gave him a Cheshire cat-like grin. Like a predator that just found its favorite prey. "Izuku. Man, you have some luck, buddy. No. No. Izuku almost shouted. I can't take any more kids. Isn't there anyone else you know who'll take in these kids? Not really. Nowadays fewer and fewer people want to be parents, let alone adopt children with dangerous or troublesome quirks. Nami said. But before we get to that, let's have a little talk somewhere more private, shall we? If I run, would you arrest me? Izuku asked, seriously considering that option at this point. No, but I might tase you. She replied. Izuku sighed. He had a bad feeling about this. Later, Nami had brought them into one of the offices and the two of them sat down opposite each other. So the boy's name is Fuhai and the girl's name is Kiba, Nami explained. They're quite a troublesome pair with very troublesome quirks. Fuhai's is called unkillable. He's basically an unkillable zombie. He can regenerate any part of his body, however, he needs to eat a lot of meat in order to do this, and his flesh rots naturally, and if he starts to rot too much or takes too much damage without enough meat to recover, he goes into a berserk state and starts trying to eat whatever meat he can. And I mean, whatever meat. Izuku placed his hand on his chin, processing the information he was given. That sounds like it could be seriously dangerous. Luckily Fatgum's fat was able to absorb his bite, but if he hadn't been there. He's also really strong since his body doesn't have any limiters. Nami finished explaining his quirk. He was hit by a car at age 7 and his parents thought he was dead, but when he came back as a zombie and started smelling like decaying meat, they kicked him out. Izuku wasn't even angry at this point. He was just disappointed. How many bad parents are there in this city? Now you know how I feel, every day, Nami said, giving him a blank expression. Speaking of shitty parents, the girl's quirk is called Blood Boost. It allows her to significantly enhance her strength when she consumes human blood. The downside of this is, she also requires human blood to stay alive. Her parents abandoned her. Izuku guessed. Yup. To be fair, she did start trying to suck their blood and proclaimed she was the queen of the vampires, but still throwing your kid onto the streets is a pretty shit thing to do no matter the circumstance. Nami took a sip of her coffee. Anyway, we've been trying to catch these two for years now. They've been causing trouble for a while, mostly stealing meat. They think we're trying to arrest them, so they keep running away, and the girl's quirk makes her really hard to handle. That boost she gets from blood is very strong. She's even been able to fend off some of the lower-ranked pro heroes. That ''s ... amazing. Izuku took out one of his notebooks and started jotting down notes. So, I've explained their tragic backstories. Time to sell you on this. Nami prepared to make the kill. She brought out her phone and started playing sad violin music. These two poor children have stuck together through thick and thin, and now they might be separated if I can't find someone who'll take both of them in. They've been through so much strife, so much hunger. If only they could find someone, anyone with a lot of money, a talent for cooking and child raising, and someone who could give them the affection they deserve. Nami laid it on thick with the overacting. It was so bad that a child would probably be able to perform better. But it worked well enough to get Izuku thinking. I've heard of siblings being separated because only one of them gets adopted, so I guess it makes sense that these two could be separated. But that could cause problems if they really have spent a lot of time together. One or two of them might run away, and that would leave them back on the streets. Izuku started muttering. And that's only if they get adopted in the first place. They might just spend years in the government facilities, waiting for an adoption that will never come. Unwanted. And unloved. Spurned by the world, they may turn to crime without the right guidance. Nami cried. Oh, won't someone think of the stop? Izuku shouted. He cringed at both Nami's horribly sappy acting and the fact that what she was saying may have held some truth. Many people turn to villainy because they were mistreated as kids. He may not have known these kids for long, but he didn't like the idea of that happening to anyone, especially kids. Izuku groaned and laid his head down. He wanted to help these kids. Really he did. But he wasn't sure if he could handle 4 kids. Or if his mother would want to be responsible for taking care of 5 children. It can't be that hard to find other people to take care of them, can it? They're nice kids. And you're paying them to do it. Yeah, they're nice kids. Nice, flesh-eating, body-rotting, blood-drinking kids. Nami said while she turned off the music. People who are willing to adopt kids at this age are not common. Now imagine you want to adopt a kid. Are you going to adopt a lovely child from a regular orphanage that has a quirk that can I don't know, change the color of their hair, or would you like to take a child from the government that might eat you? Also, sometimes, despite our best efforts, the people taking care of these kids just die. Or they get injured to the point where they can't or don't want to take care of these kids anymore. Izuku grit his teeth. He was in a bind. If he let these kids go, he didn't know what was going to happen to them. And he couldn't find it within himself to leave these children's futures to chance. After all, he knew just how much your future could change by leaving anything up to chance. Izuku pulled out his phone and quickly started calling his mom. "What are you doing?" Nami glared at him. "Calling my mom," Izuku answered. A few seconds later, Inko picked up. "Hello? Izuku? Is something wrong?" "No, not really," Izuku said. "But it happened again." "What happened?" Inko thought about what her son could be talking about. "Izuku, you didn't get hurt again, did you?" No, I'm fine," Izuku reassured her. "I ran into some kids again. Oh." Inko finally got what her son was talking about. "Is that lazy government agent trying to pressure you into taking them again?" "Yeah, I don't know how she ever got employed." Izuku sighed. "Are you two talking about me?" Nami glared at him. "And it's 2 of them this time," Izuku continued. "There wasn't a villain involved this time. But I'm not sure what's going to happen to them if I let them go. They might be separated or, Izuku. Do you want to take them in?" Inko asked him. It's not about me," Izuku responded. "You'd be responsible for 5 kids and that's a lot to ask someone, and Izuku. Do you want to take them in?" Inko repeated the question. I want to help them," Izuku admitted. "But then do it, Izuku." Inko encouraged him. "Ever since Eri came into our lives, you've smiled, more than ever. Even more so when Kesseki came. You love taking care of these children, Izuku. But, Mom, Izuku was cut off. All I've ever wanted is your happiness, Izuku. The reason I'm trying to make sure our wealth sticks is so you can be happy doing whatever you want to do. If giving these children a home is what makes you happy, then I could never stand in the way of that." He could practically hear her smile on the other side of the phone. That kind warm smile that always made him cry. Which of course he was currently doing, and I haven't been able to be at home as much as I would like anyway. So you're the one really taking care of them. Of course, I want you to think about your own future and the children you already have under your care, but if you want to take them in, then do it. Izuku sniffed and wiped away some of his tears. "Thanks, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, Izuku," Inko said. The call ended and Izuku took a moment to compose himself. And while he took that moment, Nami, not at all subtly, slid the contracts in front of him. Izuku looked at the contracts and sighed. He always wanted to help people. This wasn't exactly what he meant, but it was something. He signed the contract and Nami sighed in relief. "Heck yeah!" she cheered. "I was getting nervous there. You've been a real help, kid. So as thanks, I got you a little something." Nami took 2 books out of her bag and handed them to Izuku. He looked at the books in confusion. Quirk Counseling 101? Teaching for Dummies? Our files say you're a smart kid, probably smarter than the test scores you get reflect, Nami said. "I know you don't really need to get a job anytime soon, But you should consider studying those two things. If you take a certain test, you can get a Quirk counselor's license and you'll be able to homeschool the kids. I'm sure they'd much rather have you teaching them than some stranger. Izuku thought about what she said for a moment. I guess this could really help them. Thank you, Nami. Izuku thanked the woman. But this isn't so that way you don't have to work to figure out a solution to the kids' education and counseling issues? Ah, you got me. Nami admitted. But I have a point, don't I? Izuku sighed in disappointment. A few minutes later Izuku walked into the room where the two kids were being held. Kiba no longer had her raggedy cloak so Izuku could see what she looked like. She had long silver hair that traveled down her back. Her eyes were blood red and her skin was extremely pale. Her fangs were rather obvious and easy to notice whenever she opened her mouth. Overall, she looked like a vampire. It's the food merchant. Kiba pointed at Izuku. Kind sir, would you please tell these two animals to return my cloak to me, and allow me and my minion to leave? I would do it myself but it appears that my strength has not fully returned. Izuku looked at the two officers who were also in the room for answers. Her skin is sensitive to the sun, Fuhai explained. She needs her cloak. That cloak is made of dirty rags. One of the officers pointed out. It's probably just as bad for her heat as the sun. And her smell. The other cop said. Izuku glared at the officer, who put up his hand in a defensive manner. Izuku turned towards the two children. We can get you a new cloak. Kiba pouted. That cloak was crafted by me personally. I will not accept some cheap wit about a red cloak. Izuku asked. Fuhai gave him an approving look. Ah, I never liked that old cloak. I'm sure you could purchase one of better quality. Kiba did a complete 180. How about we get some red cloth and we can make the cloak together? Izuku suggested. Kiba's eyes sparkled. I knew there was something I liked about you, food merchant. You really get me. I'm not a food merchant. Izuku smiled at the strange title. My name is Izuku Midoriya, I'll be taking care of you from now on. The two looked at him with wide, almost disbelieving eyes. For a few moments, neither of them said anything, until Kiba's face broke out into a wide grin. I knew it. She jumped up, now standing on the chair. I knew that someday someone would recognize my greatness. That someone would provide me with food and shelter, knowing that I would one day return the favor 20-fold. All those fools who threw me out and tried to stop me will regret not aiding me sooner. Today is the day my life truly begins. Ha. There were a few moments of silence as no one really knew how to react to that before Fuhai got off his chair and gave Izuku a polite bow. Thank you for taking us in. We are in your care, he said in his usual monotone. Well, this is going to be interesting, Izuku thought to himself. Chapter 4, Shorts 1, Author Note, okay. The first 3 chapters were made at the same time so I wasn't able to answer any questions. This is a Dadzaku fic, however, Izuku himself doesn't see it like that at the moment. He's still trying to look at this like a somewhat normal situation and he sees himself as the older brother and Inko as the guardian. This will change as time goes on. Yes, eventually Izuku will get a bigger house. You'll actually see the start of that next chapter. Yes, Izuku will interact with the main MHA cast of heroes and villains. I don't have anything planned. One of the reasons this fic is so easy to write is because it's so simple and has no arcs, but trust me, Izuku and the kids will interact with everyone. How many children will Izuku take in? Why not all of them? Basically, there is no set limit to how many children Izuku will take in. Don't worry, however, these point chapters will focus on short character moments with the cast we already have. Next, let's talk about the other 2 canon children Izuku has saved. Kota and Katsuma. Kota will make an appearance, Katsuma will not. The reason being is that unlike most anime children, Katsuma has a family that isn't dead. I mean his mom is I think, but he still has a dad, also he lives on island. Also, I'm not using any of the kids from when Bakugo and Todoroki got their license. Now let's talk about future children. This fic is mainly about children that have quirks that are too dangerous, powerful, or otherwise troublesome for most people to want to deal with, or children whose quirks turn them into rejects of society. There will be exceptions to this, but there has to be reasons behind those exceptions. Next, let's talk about suggestions for OC children. I might take those suggestions and put that child in there. However, I also might not. I have a list of children that are going to be added. If a child is too similar to one of the children on the list, then they won't get in. Lastly, let's talk about the suggestions I've gotten for Izuku to adopt canon characters that are close to his age. Presumably they want me to age them down. This may or may not happen. I don't know yet. Anyway, on to the story. What you want to be. So what do you all want to be when you grow up? Izuku asked. The 4 children, who were previously coloring, looked up at Izuku. I wanna be queen of the world, Kiba said, immediately. Well, Izuku didn't want to tell her that that was impossible. She'll figure that out eventually. He knew what it was like to have your dreams crushed after all. That might take a while, so you should probably find a job you can do in the meantime, Izuku responded. Kiba frowned before adopting a thinking position, with her head resting on her fist and her face scrunched up. The other kids all seemed to be thinking hard about this as well. I never really thought about it, Fu said. Me neither, catted. Well, what do you all want to do? Izuku saw Kiba about to say something. Besides ruling the world. Kiba pouted. I wanna eat, Fu answered simply. I want to display my power for people to worship. Kiba answered. I wanna ... I don't know. Shrugged. Eri stayed silent, thinking about the question thoroughly. Izuku thought about their responses. Unfortunately, Fu's request would be difficult to find an answer for. His taste bugs were muted, meaning that he could only ever taste things that had a very strong flavor, meaning he likely wouldn't find much success as a chef or a food critic. However, Kiba's request did bring something to mind. Something that he was trying very deliberately not to think about. Well, you could be a pro hero, Kiba, Izuku suggested, wincing slightly. Pro heroes get to use their quirks to help people and fight villains, and they can get very popular to the point where people basically worship them. Kiba thought about it, her eyes widened more and more each second. Then she smiled. Yes. Yes. That is a magnificent idea, caretaker. I shall become the #1 pro hero. And then when the world witnesses my power, they shall bow down and worship me. Ahaha. Well, at least she has a plan now, Fu said. I guess I'll do that too. Eh? But didn't you want to do something with food? Izuku was surprised at how fast he went along with it. I can barely taste anything. I doubt I'd seriously be able to get a food-related job, Fu said. Plus, as long as I eat a lot of food, I'm practically unkillable, so taking a dangerous job is okay, I guess. This kid is so ... self-aware. Izuku thought. I know you two can, zombie heroes, said. And maybe I could be ... a snake person. Everyone gave her confused looks. Dear sister, you are already a snake person. In fact, you are a snakes person. As in plural. Kiba said. No, not that kind of snake person. A person who takes care of snakes. K explained. You mean a snake handler? Or a snake charmer? Izuku asked. Yeah. K said. I could really slither into that job. Okay. I guess I could buy her a few books about snakes. And I could help Kiba and Fu train their quirks. Izuku was thinking about how he could best help these kids. What about Eri? Izuku looked to Eri, causing everyone else to pay attention to her as well. So what do you want to be, Eri? Went right up to her, ignoring personal space as perusal. I ... I want to help people. I think. The horned girl said meekly. Then you could be a hero like us. Kiba suggested. Eri shifted around nervously. I don't really want to hurt people. Then what about a doctor? Everyone looked at Izuku. Or a nurse. Your quirk would be perfect for it. My quirk? Eri shrank back at the mention of her quirk. She still disliked thinking about and especially the thought of using it. Your quirk rewinds a person's body to a previous state. If you train your quirk enough, then you could use it to completely heal people. You could bring back limbs or cure deadly diseases. You could save thousands of lives. Izuku said. Oh really? Eri's eyes widened with hope. Of course. Izuku smiled brightly at her. Yeah Eri, your quirk is amazing. Said. Sounds pretty cool. Fu gave her a thumbs up. Indeed, quite a useful quirk. You shall be the greatest doctor in my world order. Kiba said. Eri blushed profusely and started muttering thanks. Izuku smiled as the children seemed more excited, now that they had new goals in mind. The best color. I can't believe my siblings could be so blind. Izuku heard Kiba yell from the living room. He put down his toothbrush and rushed over. After walking to the living room, he saw Kiba standing in the I'm mad stance against all of the other kids. Her face in an adorable pout and her hands balled up and fists were down by her hips. What's going on? Izuku asked. They're blind. Kiba protested. We're not blind, we just have different opinions, Fu explained. Said her favorite color was green, and Kiba started going on saying the best color was red. Kept saying she still liked green, so Kiba put it to a vote and we all said we liked green more than red. Which is preposterous. Kiba insisted. Red is obviously the superior color, it is the color of blood. It is the color of passion. The color of my eyes. The color of blood. How could it not be superior? I think she's just green with envy about not being on the winning side. Proudly punned. Kiba. Izuku gave her a disappointed look. You have to accept that other people will have different opinions than you. It doesn't make them wrong and it doesn't make you wrong. If you don't learn how to accept other people's opinions, then you'll live your life constantly angry, and you'll never make any friends. Flashes of Bakugo appeared in Izuku's mind. Kiba didn't look convinced, however. A few more seconds of looking at Izuku's I'm not angry, just disappointed face caused her to falter. Fine. Kiba looked away from Izuku. Name one thing that's green. That splendor surpasses all of that which I have said, then I will concede. Immediately, everyone pointed to Izuku, causing the teen's face to freeze in a shocked expression. Kiba stared at Izuku for a few moments, before pouting and muttering. I still like red better. But I guess green is okay. Izuku meanwhile, felt his heart clench from how touched he felt and proceeded to pass out. Big words. Ahaha. Soon, caretaker, you shall feel the inescapable wrath of me. Kiba. The vampire girl said. You thought I would simply allow myself to be trampled like an insect? Think again, fool. Izuku and Kiba were playing Superhero Bash Unlimited, and seeing as Kiba had never played a video game before, she had been spending the last 2 hours getting beat into a pulp. Anytime Izuku notably went easy on her or let her win, she would protest, saying she would beat him at full strength. She had been relentlessly fighting him with her character of choice, that being Edgeshot, and to her credit had made some improvements. She learned that she had to rely on speed in order to win, and that she would have to use it and run tactics against Izuku's character, All Might, who had super armor. Where did you learn all those words, by the way? Izuku asked her. Impressed by my verbose way of speaking, I see. Kiba gave him a smug look. Well, you see, when my quirk arrived, the memories of my past lives flooded into me, filling me with knowledge and experience from thousands of years ago. As such, my vocabulary reflects the noble status I once carried, and those she found a dictionary, back when we lived on the streets, and spent a year studying it so she could sound smarter. Fu interrupted her from the kitchen. Kiba turned around and gave him a look of absolute fury. However, looking away from a game you're playing is never a good idea. Detroit Smash. The one screen All Might said as he punched Deadshot off the screen. "Game," said the announcer. Kiba looked back at the screen, with a look of anguish and awe. "Curse you, All Might. One day I will have my revenge. I really hope she doesn't hold a grudge against the real All Might for this," Izuku thought. "Training with Quirks Part 1, you can do it, Eri." Izuku encouraged her. "That's right, Eri, you can do it." Catted. Eri held the apple core firmly in her hand. She took a deep breath and activated her quirk. Her horn started to grow, and both Izuku and Eri grew anxious. "Just imagine a slow-moving river," Izuku said. Eri's horn started to glow and Izuku held back for safety. The apple core slowly started to regrow some of the bitten-off chunks of apple, however, that only lasted for a second and a half, before the speed started to increase significantly. In 3 seconds the apple was fully reformed, and, before Izuku could tell her to stop, the apple vanished. "Ah!" Eri groaned in frustration at having failed. "It's okay, Eri. No one succeeds on their first try," Izuku reassured her. "Now just try to turn it off." Eri closed her eyes. She tried to focus on stopping the flow of power, like Izuku told her. After about a minute or so, her horn started receding. Before Eri lost her grip on her power and her horn extended to full length. "Ah! Aga!" Eri groaned as her quirk took its toll on her body. Izuku grabbed the dart gun next to him and shot it at Eri's arm. "Ah!" Eri cried out in pain. A few seconds later the dart's effects started to affect her. Her horn stopped glowing and fully receded back. She fell to the ground, and once Izuku knew it was safe, he picked her up and took her in his arms. "Darn it! I was sure she had it this time." Snapped her fingers. Her quirk really took her by the horn. "Eri's quirk seems to be immensely hard to control," Izuku told her. "But it's important that she's trying. Her quirk is so dangerous, and she's so afraid of it. Thank you for being here and encouraging her." "No problem." Saluted. "Me and Eri have a bond that's harder than stone." Izuku chuckled. She really needs to find some new puns. "Caretaker. We have finished." Kiba barged into the room, sweating profusely and clearly tired. Kiba and Fu had been training their bodies by doing basic exercises while wearing some special weighted clothes Izuku had bought them. These weights were made specifically for people with enhanced strength, and while they were very expensive, especially for Kiba, whose strength when fully fed with blood was ridiculous, so much to the point where Izuku had her start exercising without being full, it was nothing to Izuku's new elf. Wasn't doing any exercise. Her quirk was simple. You look at her eyes, you turn to stone. Not much they could do about that. So her only job was to act as a cheerleader to the others. Fu walked into the room, seemingly completely unfazed by the exercise, which was to be expected since his stamina was seemingly infinite, and looked at Eri's sleeping form. It didn't work? She was able to control it for a second, Izuku said, pulling the dart from her arm. "It's not much, but she's getting there. Is she going to be okay?" Kiba asked, showing concern. "She'll be fine. Her quirk drains her stamina, and the dart accelerates that drain. She's exhausted, but she'll only need some sleep." There was a long pause. Everyone just stared at Izuku as he tucked Eri into bed. "Let's go outside. I promised I would make everyone their favorite food after the training, right?" Izuku forced a smile as he tried to lift their spirits. There was a short pause. "No," Kiba muttered. "Huh?" Izuku was confused. Kiba wasn't one to refuse a nice bloody steak with fruit punch. It would not be a true feast if everyone was not here. Kiba said, resuming her confident persona. "We should wait for tomorrow. When she is awake." The other two nodded, agreeing to the idea. Izuku smiled at them. It was moments like this that made it feel like a family. "Okay. Then let's go to bed." Chapter 5, Oozing In. Dagaba Beach. A dumping ground that people would pour trash onto for years. It was proof of people's laziness in that they would rather dump their trash on a beach than do it the normal way. And now it was time to take advantage of that laziness. "Alright, today you're going to help clean up this beach," Izuku said. The two kids, Fu and Kiba, did not look impressed. "I thought you said we would be training?" "How is this training?" Kiba crossed her arms. Izuku had told the kids that he had special training planned for them and that he would be taking them to a special training ground. Inko was actually home this time, so Izuku let her watch and Eri. "Well, a lot of this trash is really heavy," Izuku pointed out. "And others are really fragile. You two will be in charge of taking the trash to this garbage truck. And to help out with the training, I made something new." Izuku pulled out a clipboard from his bag. "Today you and all your siblings will start earning points. The better you all do on your quirk training and studying, the more points you get. And when you all get 1,000 points, I'll take you all to an amusement park." Suddenly Kiba's eyes widened in excitement. "An amusement park? You mean those places that are made purely to entertain the masses and bring delight and joy into the hearts of families?" "I mean it's probably built purely to take your money but seems excited," Fu thought. Going to an amusement park didn't really excite him all too much considering he can't really feel the sense of adrenaline and thrill that the rides and other attractions provide, but he was sure everyone else would have fun and that was enough for him. He would probably get some good meat too. "That's right." Izuku smiled at her excitement. "For this training, you'll get points based on how heavy the trash is, and how intact it is. So try not to break anything." While it didn't matter much if the trash was broken, it would help them in learning to control their strength. Fu was pretty good at that, but they'd had to replace a lot of things because Kiba kept accidentally breaking them. "Well, what are we waiting for, Fu? We have points to get." Kiba grabbed Fu by the arm and ran towards the beach, causing Fu's arm to rip off and blood to go flying everywhere. Fu sighed as his arm grew back. "I'm really glad she doesn't do that to anyone else." Izuku gave a nervous laugh. "Me too." After that, the two children got to work. At first Kiba in her haste to gain points ended up breaking quite a lot of things. She almost destroyed the garbage truck by throwing a fridge at it from the beach. Luckily it missed, and Izuku gave her a stern talk about not throwing things. However, it didn't take long for the two kids to make a plan. Kiba would carry the really heavy stuff, fridges, couches, cabinets, cars, etc., while Fu would carry the other, more fragile things. Kiba would still break some things and make some dents, but after a while, she started getting things to the truck mostly intact. Izuku loved watching them make progress. His only source of fulfillment at this point was watching these kids grow. It made him happy in a way that nothing else did at this point. Did that speak for how empty his life was that he relied on children to bring him a sense of purpose? One could argue that, but Izuku didn't like to think about such things. So far things were going well. And then something unexpected happened. "Young Midoriya," said a familiar voice from behind him. Izuku's eyes widened like dinner plates and his head spun around. All Me behind him was All Might in his skinny form, and a brown-haired girl walking next to him. "I mean, All Might. I could have sworn I saw All Might around here somewhere, guess I must have been hallucinating." "Ha ha ha." Izuku laughed nervously, sweating buckets as he nervously tried to play off his blunder. "It's fine, young Midoriya. Young Uraraka is already aware of my identity," All Might said. "Wait, they know about this form?" Izuku and Uraraka said at the same time. They both looked at each other and after a brief moment, Izuku looked away, blushing from embarrassment. Sorry. It's fine, I was just a little shocked," Uraraka explained. "Oh my god, a girl is talking to me," Izuku thought as he blushed and fidgeted in place. "Young Uraraka, this is young Midoriya." All Might introduced her. "He is a friend of mine." "FFFF friend?" Izuku stuttered. "We are friends?" "Of course." All Might gave him thumbs up. Izuku stood there in silence for a moment. before passing out and falling onto the street. Young Midoriya. All Might ran up to go check on him. Is he okay? Yoraraka was both confused and very concerned. Yes, he's fine. He's more than a bit of a fanboy and his self-confidence isn't great. All Might told her. He probably just passed out from shock. Oh good. She wasn't really sure what to make of that. Just as All Might was about to wake him up, Kira ran up holding a car over her head. Caretaker, I don't know why this meant. Then she saw All Might holding an unconscious Izuku. Gasp. You fiend. You knocked out Caretaker. Young lady, this isn't what it looks like. All Might put Izuku down. Take this fiend. Kiba threw the car in her hands at All Might, aiming just over his head in hopes of scaring him away. All Might, however, saw a car heading at him and reacted. He transformed into his buff form and caught the car in his hands. Young lady. You should not throw cars at people. Using your quirk in public is a crime. Meanwhile, Kiba was in shock. All Might? The real All Might? What happened to that skeleton man? He ran away. All Might weakly tried to lie. That doesn't make sense. Perhaps it was his quirk. Kiba shook her head. No matter. Now that you're here, I may finally have my revenge. Revenge? All Might was seriously confused. Revenge for what? For your unbalanced excuse for a character in Superhero Bash Unlimited. Kiba answered. All Might looked at her, not believing what he just heard. You're not serious, are you? Have at you. Kiba charged at All Might. Blood kick of eternal torment. Kiba jumped in the air and dive kicked at All Might. All Might, being All Might, caught her by the foot and held her in the air. Hey! Let me go. Kiba struggled, flailing about fruitlessly. Now calm down, young lady. All Might said. I believe I'm going to have a word with your parents. Well, we only have one of those and he's currently asleep. Fu arrived soon after Kiba, holding a glass jar with pink slime in it. Wait, is young Midoriya your guardian? All Might asked. Eh? Okako had no idea what was going on. Duh. Why do you think I called him caretaker? Kiba pouted, still hanging upside down. The fools who gave us life couldn't recognize us for the gifts that we are. But caretaker has a knife for recognizing true power when he sees it and takes us under his care. What? All Might and Okako asked at the same time. Our parents abandoned us and now he's taking care of us, Fu explained. Ah. All Might understood now. Sorry. It's fine. You didn't do anything wrong, Fu said. We got over it a while ago. As far as I'm concerned, caretaker is the only parent I need, Kiba said proudly. Which is why I will never forgive you for hurting him. Yeah, why is he passed out? Fu asked. He fanboyed out after I said we were friends. All Might explained sheepishly. Your friends? The two children asked simultaneously. Yes. Young Midoriya is a trusted friend of mine, All Might said in his typical bombastic voice. Why didn't caretaker say he was friends with the #1 hero? I could have asked him to fight you sooner, Kiba said. Well, we don't actually know much about Izuku, Fu realized. Or Riri. Iri? Okako swore this was only getting more confused as time went off. Yes, I know her. She is the young girl Midoriya saved from the Yakuza, All Might said. What? Okako shouted in surprise. What's a Yakuza? Kiba asked. I think they're bad guys, Fu said. To think there would be a day when someone would ask that question. All Might thought to himself. I'm happy, but I feel so old. Oh. Izuku groaned as he started waking up. He looked around and saw everyone looking at him. All Might was still holding Kiba in the air. The car Kiba threw was destroyed on the other side of him. What happened? Izuku asked in confusion. A few explanations later, Izuku gave Kiba a soft head chop. You don't throw cars at people. Izuku said loudly, not quite shouting but saying it loudly enough to convey his disapproval. I wasn't going to throw it at him, just above him. Kiba protested. And with my incredible aim, there is no way I could have missed. Izuku thought of the many things he could say to convey his point. Instead, he decided to do something else. He picked up a pebble off the ground and placed it in Kiba's hands. Throw this at the jar Fu is holding, Izuku instructed her. Thinking this would help demonstrate her point, Kiba threw the stone right at the jar. The stone just missed the jar by about a foot, instead breezing past it and over the beach, eventually hitting the water. That was just a fluke. Kiba said denial. She picked up a handful of rocks and started throwing them at Fu. Isn't this dangerous? Okako pointed out. Worried for Fu's safety. Oh, no, Fu can regenerate from anything and he can't feel pain either, Izuku explained. He'll be completely fine so long as he's well fed. Kiba kept throwing the rocks. Sometimes she would get close but other times she would be way off. At about rock number 9 she finally managed to graze the thing, leaving a crack in its side. Ugh! These are all flukes! Kiba shouted, tears going down her face. Izuku put his hand on her shoulder and gave her the disappointed look she hated so much. We make mistakes, we all do. And you'll never improve if you never admit you're wrong. Kiba went silent, taking in Izuku's words without any argument. If that person wasn't All Might and if you had missed, then you could have really hurt him. Izuku didn't want to say kill, she felt bad enough as it is. And using your quirk to hurt someone is illegal. We could have gotten in a lot of trouble, I might not have been allowed to take care of you all anymore. That made Kiba's eyes go wide. The thought of being back on the street, as well as sending all her new siblings away all because of what she did. I'm sorry. Kiba cried softly. It's okay, you should apologize to All Might for throwing a car at him. And for attacking him. Izuku said. Kiba turned to All Might and gave him an apologetic bow. I'm sorry for attacking you. I forgive you. Just make sure not to do it again. All Might said. Izuku put his hand on Kiba's head, gently patting her. I appreciate you trying to defend me, but next time be more careful, you're way too strong for some people to handle. Kiba nodded, subtly leaning into Izuku's comforting touch. Izuku stopped petting her and switched back to his stern face. I know you only meant to protect me and didn't mean to really hurt anyone, I'll only give you a light punishment. All the points you earned today are gone. Understood? Kiba nodded dejectedly. Understanding why but still being bummed out about it. Izuku turned to All Might. I'm so sorry about that. I know you're supposed to report stuff like this but I would really appreciate it if you could keep quiet about this. Well, I've asked you to keep a few of my secrets, so I suppose I could keep yours just this once. All Might laughed. Thank you so much. Izuku bowed. By the way, when did you come to care for 2 more children anyway? All Might asked. It's actually 3. Izuku sighed. And it apostrophes ... a long story. 2 long stories later. All Might and Okako looked at him in disbelief. Well, you All Might didn't know what to say to this. He'd had some pretty crazy coincidences in his life, but usually, they were spaced out between each other. To have such specific things happen all within such a short time span, it was rather ... absurd. Do you have a quirk that attracts kids or something? Okako asked, that being the only explanation for what she had just heard. No. Izuku shook his hands out in front of him. Never mind. I don't attract kids to me or anything, it's all just strange coincidences. Hey, Izuku. What is your quirk? Fu asked, still holding the cracked jar. That's Izuku really didn't want to tell them. He had told Eri a while back and she was the only one who knew he was quirkless. Well knew technically, but she didn't know what a quirkless person was, and he had told her not to mention it. He loved these kids and he knew they at least liked him. But he knew how quickly things could change when people knew you were quirkless. And so did All Might, who was giving Izuku a look of pure pity. "It's not impotent." Izuku refused to answer. That miffed Fu a little. And Kiba, but she didn't feel like saying anything right now. They barely knew anything about the person taking care of them, and that made them feel rather self-centered. Like they had only ever been thinking about themselves. "I mean, if you don't tell us what it is, I'm going to assume it attracts children," Fu said. "It's not that," Izuku protested. "I just don't like talking about it, okay?" Fu saw Izuku was getting really upset and uncomfortable, and felt bad that he had pushed the matter. There was a short pause as no one really knew what to say. Izuku looked for something to distract from the mood and his eyes landed on the jar of slime. "Oh, since I asked Kiba to throw stones at this, I'll just give you full points for this anyway." Izuku took the jar from him. "Points?" Okako asked. "Oh yeah, I was kinda helping them train their quirks using the garbage on the beach. They have trouble controlling their strength, so when they bring the garbage back I give them points for how intact it is," Izuku explained. "You were using this place for training too?" Okako was shocked at the coincidence. "You're the man of coincidences, I guess." "Huh?" Izuku didn't understand what she meant. "Well, it just so happens that great minds think alike," All Might said. "Because I was using the speech to train young Uraraka." "What, really?" Izuku was shocked. His life really was full of coincidences. "I'm sorry for interrupting your training then. I'll find somewhere else to train." No, it's fine." Okako smiled at him brightly, making him recoil in shock. "All Might says I'm almost done. After all, I've been training to be a hero for a while." "You're training to be a hero?" Izuku shouted. "Oh, wait. If you're with All Might, I guess that was kind of obvious. Still, training with All Might. You must be pretty amazing." Okako gave an embarrassed laugh as her face turned a little red from the compliment. "Crack." "Huh?" Izuku looked down at the jar and noticed that it was moving like there was something alive inside of it trying to get out. Crack, crack, crack. The jar shook more and more as cracks started appearing in it, and the pink goo started pushing itself out of the cracks. What's going on?" Okako asked. Izuku had a bad feeling that this would soon be a familiar situation. Break. The jar burst open, and the pink goo flew up into the air. It moved around, expanding and contracting, before taking shape. When the goo landed back on the ground, it was now in the shape of a 7-year-old pink goo girl with pigtails, wearing the cap of the jar as a hat. "Ga-oo-oo-oo!" The girl cried excitedly, waving her arms in the air. Everyone looked at the girl for a minute. Then at Izuku. Izuku sighed and kneeled down. "Hey there. What's your name?" "Goo." The girl said. "Your name is Goo?" Izuku asked. The girl shook her head. "Goo exclamation mark is, all you can say is Goo?" Izuku realized. The girl nodded. Izuku sighed. "I guess it makes sense if she doesn't have any vocal cords. Her quirk doesn't seem that dangerous, so hopefully, we can call her parents or sis." Izuku was shaken out of his thoughts by the sound of something melting. He looked at the girl's head and realized the cap was sinking into her head, melting and dissolving away. Then he saw smoke rising up from the ground and noticed the girl was getting lower. She was burning the floor she was standing on. "Oh. She isn't made of goo. She's made of acid," Izuku realized. That's a dangerous quirk. And her being in a jar might have been someone trying to throw her away. Most likely her parents. Meaning that it was a good thing Nemi had given him her phone number. Later, Izuku sat in one of the offices at the police station, wondering what exactly happened with his life. He had been escorted to the police station to wait for Nami. They had managed to get the goo girl in a special containment suit to stop her from destroying everything she touches. She was very hesitant to get in it. Her experience with the jar probably made her dislike being confined inside things. However, They managed to convince her after showing she could still move around in it. She was also very hesitant to leave Izuku, not as hesitant as Iria when they first met, but she did seem attached to him. How does this keep happening? Izuku wondered, trying to calculate the odds. His thoughts were interrupted when Nami stepped in the room, wearing an elementary schooler's backpack and seemed very excited. "Why are you wearing that?" Izuku asked in confusion. "To carry my stuff," Nami answered as she took her seat across from Izuku. "I like to use small bags because it's easier to carry around. Also, it discourages people from asking me to carry their stuff." Izuku was pretty sure he was almost past the point of being surprised by Nami's laziness. "Is she an orphan?" Izuku got right to the point. "You know it," Nami chirped. "Her name is Sansan, age 7. She was born with her quirk, acid body. Her body is made of special acid, capable of dissolving through a lot of things. She can also expand and contract herself at will. When she was born she killed her mother because well you know, there was acid coming out of her. Apparently, her father blamed her for it and gave her to other family members, and those other family members couldn't deal with her because you know, acid. And she was tossed around inside her family until one of them got a jar made of special glass she couldn't melt through and tossed her into the beach, where she stayed for about a year until you found her. She was stuck in that jar for a year?" Izuku couldn't imagine what that must have been like, being trapped unable to move, in a small space for a year. And doing that to a 6-year-old. It was easily the second worst thing to happen to any of the children under his care. Iri's backstory was still quite a bit worse. She can't speak due to not having any vocal cords, but our telepaths have been speaking to her so we got some information from her, Nami said. She knows how to write but barely. She doesn't like being in her containment suit, and she's really grateful to you for letting her out of the jar. I think you know where this is going. Just give me the contract. Izuku sighed. Not so fast, Nami said, making Izuku look at her with slight shock. You see, I've been thinking, this is fate. It must be. There is no other explanation for how this keeps happening. So I talked to some of the higher-ups and gave them the proposal. A proposal? Izuku didn't know where this was going, and knowing Nami, this could end either very well or very poorly for him. That you become the official caretaker of the OPCC children, Nami said. Meaning that you'll be in charge of taking care of any children that fall under the jurisdiction of the OPCC, meaning any child that's abandoned or given up by their parents or guardians and have quirks that would make them a hazard to take care of under normal circumstances, will go to you. Izuku blinked, staying silent as he took in the information. Then when he was about to say something, Nami spoke first. I know what you're gonna say, I don't have enough space. Wouldn't keeping all those children under one roof be dangerous? Should you really give such an important job to a teenager? I'm so conflicted, herp. Nami said in a mocking voice. But we got you covered. As an integral part of our branch, you'll be given the support of the entire branch. You'll be provided with a huge home with a high-tech security system to keep you safe, to keep the children safe, and keep you safe from the children. The house will be provided with various means of entertainment and will be a good distance away from the general populace in the forest at the edge of the city. You'll be provided with means to deal with all of the children's quirks, and you can hire assistants to help you, provided they pass our screening process. And of course, you'll be paid rather generously, on top of all the money your family already possesses, you rich bastard. And, lastly, if you're worried about your age, we've given children to people much older than you and they fucked up in record time. Don't worry about it, you're fine. Izuku closed his mouth, and further considered the offer. Honestly, it seemed too good. Aside from the chance of dying due to taking care of such dangerous children, he didn't really see much of a reason to refuse. Listen, people wish they could take care of their kids instead of doing their jobs. Now you can do both. Nami further tried to sell him on it. I've read your file, Izuku Midoriya. You wanted to be a hero since you were born. But due to a cruel twist of fate, you could never hope to achieve that dream. You became depressed, mopey, and eventually just shut down and stopped going outside altogether. Then fate came back, knocking on your door in the form of a little girl needing help. You answered, and took her in. Then came another, and another. Now you have the chance to help children all across Japan. You could be their hero. Put smiles on their faces. Inami cut him off again. And, if this works out, our branch could be given an upgrade, so to speak. We could start making our existence known to more people so they don't keep throwing their dangerous children out on the street, and we can get more funding to look for more children on the streets. She continued. We could keep those children from just bumping into people, like villains, who'll use them for their quirks and turn them into villains. You could literally turn the next generation of villains into the next generation of heroes. Or bakers. Or whatever the fuck. You alright? I'll do it. Izuku shouted, having a feeling this could go on for a while if he didn't stop her. Nami stopped her overacting and immediately pulled a large contract out of her bag. And when I say large, I mean large. The stack of papers was about as thick as someone's head. Since this is so big, I know you probably don't want to read it, so I'll just show you where to sign. Nami took out a pen. Izuku took the pen and said, I'm reading all of it. Nami leaned back and sighed. Yeah, I figured you'd do that. She took out her phone and some earpods, while Izuku got to reading. Many hours later, Izuku put down the pen, finally finished reading and signing the massive contract. For most people his age, they would have given up a few pages and or skipped over things. But Izuku was proficient at studying, reading, and analysis, so he was used to looking through massive piles of words. The contract explained a few things that Nami either glossed over or left out in her explanation, but none of it deterred Izuku from signing it. It explained that Izuku would slowly receive the children they already had in their care, over a long period of time, giving both him and the children time to adjust, rather than just shoving all the children onto his lap at once. He would also not really be considered a government employee. Rather, he would work with the government rather than for it. Essentially, he would be the boss of an organization funded by and had ties to the government but was still technically independent. This gave Izuku a lot of freedom in what he was allowed to do. This surprised Izuku. He figured they would want more control over him, but it seemed like they were content with him doing whatever he wanted. It was actually kinda worrying how much freedom he had. Most of the contract was just making sure he didn't back out of any agreements or stop accepting children. However, when Izuku remembered who wrote this contract, it made more sense. Izuku had done his research on the OPCC, and they were an extremely small and underfunded branch of the government, likely due to their inefficiency. They had difficulties finding people who would take care of the children they obtained, hence the children would spend most of their lives in a government facility with a growing sense they were rejected from society. And a small but noticeable percentage of children under their care had grown up to become villains. And due to the underfunding, it makes it hard for them to look for more dangerous children, and it makes it almost impossible to advertise themselves, which is why so little people know about them. So it makes sense that they would desperately want Izuku to sign this contract, as it would get rid of one of the main issues they were faced with and allow them to produce better results, and likely obtain more funding, as well as reducing their workload. Izuku looked at Nami, who had fallen asleep in her chair. Nami? Izuku said. The woman kept on sleeping. Her earpods kept her from hearing him. Izuku wondered how to wake her up. He could just touch her, but it felt rude and perverted to just touch a woman while they were sleeping. Or at least it was to Izuku. He found a nameplate on the desk and picked it up, before poking Nami in the shoulder with it. Huh? Nami woke up. Where am I? Oh, right, the big deal. Oh right, the big deal. Nami looked at the signed contract in front of her, grabbing it and quickly flipping through it to make sure everything was signed. Haha, fuck yeah. She celebrated. I am definitely getting a fucking promotion. She looked at Izuku with a crazed grin on her face. The house will take a few weeks to complete and we'll notify you when it's done. Now if you excuse me, I'm buying drinks tonight. With that Nemi ran out of the room, jumping and cheering as she went. Izuku sat back and thought about what he just did. This was his job, now. This was his life now. He would be spending the rest of his life giving children the happiness and love they deserved. He thought about the kids already under his care. He thought about them playing together, being happy. Because of him. He smiled slightly. If he couldn't be a hero, then he could settle for